Now known for being the man who was attempting to prevent the Oilers from wasting franchise cornerstones Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, most people will know Ken Holland as the longtime general manager of the Detroit Red Wings. And when I say long time, I mean it. From 1997 to 2019, Holland led one of the NHL's most prestigious franchises, taking over for co-GMs Jim DeVilano and the legendary Scotty Bowman, following the Wings' Stanley Cup victory in 1997. The team would go on to win again in 98, although Holland can't quite take credit, with the core, of course, having already been intact. But from there, it's interesting to note that the Red Wings struggled to get back to the final, losing to Colorado in the semifinals 2 years in a row, losing to the LA Kings in the first round in 2001. But if there were questions about Holland then, they certainly disappeared the next year as the Wings won their first of 2 cups with Holland at the helm, beating the Hurricanes in 5 games in the 02 Cup final, and of course going on to win the 08 Cup final against the Penguins in 6. From there, Holland's reputation becomes interesting. To truly understand, we have to look back to the 1990-91 season where the Red Wings made the playoffs, and they would do so every single season from that point on until the 2016-17 season. And Holland deserves a lot of credit for that, but the streak and the push to make the playoffs year in and year out ultimately cost the Wings. Poor decision-making when it comes to re-signings and free agency ultimately caught up to the team, and with the Wings being outside the playoff picture for the 2019-20 season, it's been 4 years now since the club has made the postseason. Now, whether or not Steve Yzerman is able to turn it around, time will tell, and whether or not some of the groundwork that Holland laid down will be able to help rebuild that dynasty is yet to be determined. But there is one aspect that I haven't mentioned yet, and you know what that is by the title of this video. It's Ken Holland's trading history when he was with the team, which is perhaps a smaller list of total trades than you'd expect it to be for a man with his tenure. So the question is just how much did his trading contribute to the Wings' success and ultimately their downfall? Well, let's find out. Let's break down every Ken Holland trade that he made as general manager of the Red Wings, win, loss, or draw. We kick things off August 18th of 1997. The San Jose Sharks acquire Mike Vernon and a 5th-round pick in 1999 that eventually became Andrei Maximenko in exchange for a 1998 2nd-round pick that became Maxim Linnick and a 1999 2nd-rounder that became current Toronto Maple Leafs head coach Sheldon Keefe. Simply put, this is a loss. Vernon spent time in San Jose. Other players involved in the deal didn't stick around, so not the best way to start things off with the loss. We move on to the next deal. March 24th of 1998. The Toronto Maple Leafs acquire a 4th-round pick that becomes Alexei Ponikarovsky in exchange for Jamie McCown. Simply put, this is another loss. Ponikarovsky, a solid Leaf for a good amount of time. Next up, March 24th of 1998, same day, the Anaheim Ducks acquired Jamie Pusher and a 4th-round pick that became Victor Wallin in exchange for Dmitry Mironov. 3 losses to kick things off. Could ultimately be a draw, but Pusher stayed in Anaheim for a decent amount of time, even though he wasn't an amazing player by any stretch. We move ahead, June 27th of 1998, and the Blues do acquire that Maxim Linnick pick. The Red Wings, in return, acquired picks that became Ryan Barnes and Brent Hobday. Hell of a name. This is a draw. A whole bunch of nothing. So 3 losses and a draw to kick things off. However, we do get our first win July 14th of 98. Peter Sikora, not that one. A 3rd-round pick that became Mike Comrie and another pick that became Alexander Krivson in exchange for Doug Brown. And this is a win. Brown stuck around with the team for a while. Wasn't anything overly notable, but still a win in this instance for Ken Holland. October 2nd of 98, and you notice too some of the time in between some of these trades. The Red Wings acquire a 2nd-round pick that becomes Tomasz Kopecky in exchange for Mike Knuble, and this is another win. Kopecky stuck around. Knuble was traded to Boston just over a season and a half later, so not that much time spent as a member of the Red Wings. There is this other trade here as well. I believe it's just separated for no reason, but I believe Igor Radulov was also a part of that deal, and regardless, it's still a win for the Red Wings because of the addition of Kopecky. And we move on. October 5th, just 4 days later, Brent Gilchrist is acquired in exchange for a pick that became Kent Mcdonald from the Tampa Bay Lightning. This is another win. Now, Gilchrist, again, not the best player in the world, but at least stuck around in Detroit for a decent amount of time. October 9th, 1998, the Anaheim Ducks acquire nothing in exchange for Doug Huda. This is a draw. It could be a win, but Huda really didn't do much, aside from going on to become the future assistant coach of the Boston Bruins. Later on that month, October 22nd of 98, the LA Kings acquire Ryan Ryan for a pick that became Per Backer, and this is another draw. It could technically be a loss. Batch played 3 games for the LA Kings. Backer played no NHL games, but it's going to be a draw ultimately. However, then we get to a win. The Detroit Red Wings acquire Chris Chelios in exchange for Anders Eriksson, Steve McCarthy, and Adam Monroe. And again, big draw. Eriksson and McCarthy were okay for the Hawks. Chris Chelios was a part of the team that won the Stanley Cup in 2002, so a huge win there. And the same day, one of 4 trades, Bill Ranford was acquired in exchange for a conditional draft pick that I believe ultimately became nothing. Ranford, though, he didn't do much. He only played 4 games for the Red Wings, so that's going to be a draw. Trade number 3 of the day, Wendell Clark and the pick that became Kent Mcdonald were acquired for Kevin Hodson and that Sheldon Keefe pick. And again, this is going to be a draw. Clark played 22 games, including the playoffs. He was a pure rental. Sheldon Keefe played 3 seasons, but the team didn't accomplish much. So you could give it to Tampa if you wanted for Keefe's tenure with the Lightning, but ultimately it is a draw. And the 4th and final trade of the day, Ulf Samuelsson is acquired for picks that became David Inman and Igor Radulov. And this is also going to be a draw, just 4 games played for Ulf Samuelsson. And of course, as you can see, he would move on just a few months later, dealt to the Atlanta Thrashers for absolutely nothing. However, it's a draw here as well, as Ulf Samuelsson never played a game for the Thrashers. So 2 different trades involving Samuelsson, neither of which is a really notable trade for the Red Wings. Both draws, as I mentioned. The next day, June 26th of 99, the San Jose Sharks acquire the pick that became goaltender Nolan Schaefer in exchange for that Andrei Maximenko pick. This is also a draw, as Schaefer only played 7 games for San Jose. Maximenko never came over from Russia. You have the deal on March 13th of 2000 now. Philippe Audet, or Audet perhaps, in exchange for Todd Gill, and this is a win. Gill played over a season's worth of games. Audet never played for the, at the time, Phoenix Coyotes. So not a major win, but a win nonetheless. And then we move to June 24th. Couple of deals that were made here on June 24th. The Nashville Predators acquire the pick that eventually became Patrick Sharp in exchange for a pick that became Stefan Leave. Now, thing to note here, ultimately it's a draw. The pick that was used to select Sharp, that was ultimately traded to Philadelphia. Leave never played a game for Detroit. So had Patrick Sharp played for Nashville, this would have been a gigantic victory. Not how it went down. That is going to be a draw. And then there's one here, and it's one of the weird things about GM Trade Tracker, where I'm not sure, of course, because we saw earlier Kopechki was involved, but if we just look at the deal for what it is, and apparently how it went down, the Red Wings acquired the pick that became Tomasz Kopechki in exchange for picks that became Philip Novak and Dominic Moore, and this is a win. I mean, Kopechki stayed in Detroit. Moore played under 90 games in his first stint with the Rangers. Of course, he'd go back much, much later in his storied career, so another decent win there for the Red Wings, all things considered. Next up, though, the following day, June 25th, the Wings acquire the pick that becomes Todd Jackson in exchange for Shane Knighty. Jackson never played an NHL game, former UMaine Black Bear, though. Shane Knighty was a very solid defenseman, a tenured defenseman as well, so solid addition there for Ottawa and a loss for Mr. Holland in that regard. Same day, they acquire a pick that becomes Christian Soderstrom in exchange for a pick that becomes Louis Mandeville. And that one, yet again, is a draw, an unremarkable trade in every possible fashion. As we move up a little bit here, August 17th, the Wings acquire Andreas Sundin in exchange for Kent Mcdonald, another unremarkable draw. And the end of the year, December 28th, we have what goes down as a major win as the Red Wings reacquire Igor Larionov in exchange for Jan Golubovsky. Golubovsky, I'm guessing it is. At the end of the day, this is a huge win. They brought Igor back. He goes on to be a part of the 0-2 Cup winning team. Of course, after winning back-to-back Cups in 97-98, he went to Florida, spent less than half the season there before being reacquired by the Red Wings. Golubovsky did not stay in North America. Fast forward very far down the road, June 24th of 2001, the Calgary Flames acquire Yuri Trubachev and Pontus Petterstrom in exchange for Andreas Yamtin. I'm guessing it is, could be Jamtin, who's to say. The other day, though, we have another unremarkable draw. But then, June 30th of 2001, Sabres fans are, they're cringing. Vyacheslav Kozlov, the pick that became Jim Slater, and a conditional pick that never became a factor, in exchange for Dominik Hasek. That's all it took. Unbelievable. A major win. Kozlov and Slater both ended up with the Atlanta Thrashers, and of course Hasek went on to win the Cup with Detroit in 2002. So a gigantic victory there for Holland and the Red Wings. Just a few weeks later, Yuri Hudler is acquired in exchange for Aaron Ward. I have this as a draw. Both played on and went to win Stanley Cups with their teams. Slater, of course, or Hudler, I should say, in 2008. Aaron Ward, of course, in 2006. If you wanted to, you could say Yuri Hudler wins the deal for Detroit because he spent a little bit more time there. But end of the day, a tremendous deal, great deal for both teams that really did work out. So it is a draw in that regard. And then, of course, we move on, March 19th of 2002. Again, you see the space between these trades. Detroit acquires defenseman Yuri Slager in exchange for Yuri Butsayev and a pick that became Jeff Genovi. And this has to be a draw as well. Slager, the best player in the trade by far, but he didn't stick around in Detroit. Somebody who did stick around in Detroit, Valtteri Filppula, was acquired in exchange for a pick that became Grigory Shafagulin. And at the end of the day, it's a huge, gigantic win with Filppula, who would go on to win the Stanley Cup with the Red Wings in 2008. September 10th of 2002, the Calgary Flames acquire Ladislav Cohn in exchange for future considerations. This is a draw. Cohn only played 3 games for the Flames, so tough break for Calgary to not win a deal where you literally got a player for nothing. Brings us to November 16th of the same year. The Buffalo Sabres acquire nothing in exchange for Jason Woolley. So it's a win there for the Red Wings and Ken Holland. Woolley was an okay player that they managed to get for free. And then we get to another big trade involving some big names. The Los Angeles Kings acquire Sean Avery, as well as Maxim Kuznetsov, and picks that eventually became Jeff Tambellini and Martin Skarsoms. Those would not stick around in LA. They ended up in Boston, of all places, in exchange for Matthew Schneider. And this is a draw. The big names cancel each other out when it comes to the amount of time spent with each of their teams. Interesting, though, that Avery and Schneider kind of cancel each other out in that way. What does not cancel each other out, or who doesn't cancel each other out? Robert Lang was acquired nearly a year later, almost a full calendar year between trades here for Ken Holland. Robert Lang is picked up from Washington in exchange for Thomas Fleischmann, the pick that becomes Mike Green, and the pick that becomes Luke Linz. And this is a huge loss for Detroit, as Rob Lang only played 2 more seasons with the Red Wings, but Fleischmann and especially Green were, gigantic players. It really, no other way to kind of phrase it there, but major, impactful players with their teams. Granted, they never won while they were in Washington, but Mike Green had, I believe, had a 30-goal season for a defenseman. It's insane. So a huge one there for Washington. We move on to the next deal. March 9th of 2006, Jamie Rivers is acquired by the Arizona Coyotes for the pick that becomes Nick Osland and this is a draw. Rivers only played 18 games for the Yotes. Osland, a unremarkable player, at least by North American tenure, as same day Corey Cross was acquired for the pick that becomes Alex Grant, and this is a draw as well. Only 16 games for Cross, and Grant never suited up for the Penguins. We move ahead to June 24th as the Arizona Coyotes acquire Chris Summers, as well as Jordan Benfeld, in exchange for Corey Emerton and the pick that became Sean Matthias. This is a draw as well. None of these players made impacts on the two teams involved in the deal, although shout out to Chris Summers, former Portland Pirate. I have a signed game-worn Chris Summers jersey just because. Why not? Next up, on September 12th of 2006, the Canucks acquire goaltender Drew McIntyre. No, not that Drew McIntyre. In exchange for basically nothing. This is a draw, though. Unremarkable deal. McIntyre didn't do much with the Canucks. And next up on February 26th. You see, though, how crazy this is. We're already in 2007. We're almost 10 years into Holland's tenure. The Red Wings acquire Kyle Calder in exchange for Jason Williams. This is going to be a draw as well. Neither played with those teams for too long. Perhaps a slight edge to Chicago for Williams, but ultimately for me, this one is a draw. Whereas we move to the next set of trades, if we kick things off the next day, as the Wings acquire Todd Bertuzzi in exchange for Sean Matthias, what eventually became Nick Spalling, and nothing else. And this is a draw as well. Basically a rental for Bertuzzi for better parts of 6 seasons for Sean Matthias in Florida. So you could argue, you know, okay, the Red Wings made it relatively far with Bertuzzi, but didn't win the Cup. Matthias was there for, I do believe, 6 seasons. So, you know, I mean, you could give it to Matthias. I ultimately call this one a draw. And then we skip ahead again, nearly a calendar year. February 8th of 2008, Montreal acquires Brett Engelhart in exchange for Francis Lemieux. And this is a completely unremarkable draw. The next trade, not so much. February 26th, the LA Kings acquire Peter Delmas and Ben Sherratt, or at least the picks that became them, in exchange for Brad Stewart. And this is a win. Stewart wins the Cup that very year and goes on to stay with the team for a couple of seasons. And speaking of the next season, over a year later, from February of 08 to June of 09, the Wings acquire picks that became Landon Ferraro and Andre Nastasic, went on to become a member of the Carolina Hurricanes, in exchange for Carter Ashton. And this is a win, a very small win, but a win nonetheless due to the amount of games played from the two players that Detroit acquired. February 6th of 2010. The jumps here are insane. The Wings acquire Ole Christian Tollefson and a pick that becomes Matthias Backman in exchange for Ville Laino. And this is a loss. Very, eventful yet short tenure for Laino, which nearly ended up with a ring in Philadelphia. Of course, he went on to sign a massive deal in Buffalo, which worked out tremendously for the Sabres. March 3rd of 2010, Calgary acquires defenseman Andy Delmore in exchange for Riley Armstrong. This is a draw, rather unremarkable. Delmore was okay. Riley Armstrong, current head coach of the ECHL's Maine Mariners, which is nice. But aside from that, unremarkable deal. Same day, Jordan Owens is acquired from the Rangers in exchange for Chris Newberry. And this is a loss, a slight loss, but Newberry did play a couple of games with the Rangers. I have to give it for them. Noted tough guy, Chris Newberry. And then we get to a very interesting deal. June 24th of 2011, over a year later, the Red Wings acquire the picks that become Tomasz Yurkov and Xavier Ouellet for Matt Wemple. And this is a draw, as none of the three worked out for their teams, to say the least. Move on to the next deal. February 21st of 2012, the Wings acquire Kyle Quincy in exchange for Sebastian Piche, perhaps, and a 2012 first-round pick. Now, this deal doesn't look that bad. Kyle Quincy was serviceable. Sebastian Piche, who's that? That 2012 first-round pick, my beautiful people, became Andrei Vasilevsky. This is perhaps the biggest loss on this list. Good lord. As we move on to February 27th of 2012, the Lightning acquire Mike Commodore in exchange for a 7th round pick. It is a draw, as Commodore only played 13 games for the Tampa Bay Lightning, so obviously the pick wasn't a factor. And then June 10th of 2012, the Wings send Brad Stewart to San Jose for a conditional pick and player Andrew Murray, as this is also a loss. So they win a deal involving Brad Stewart, and they lose a deal involving Brad Stewart as well. So, lesson learned today, don't trade away Brad Stewart. Unless you're acquiring Joe Thornton, in which case, trade away Brad Stewart. March 30th, 2013, the Philadelphia Flyers acquire defenseman Kent Huskins in exchange for a conditional 7th round pick. This is a draw, as Huskins only played 8 games for the Flyers, and again, it's rough for a team like Philadelphia to not win here when you literally got him for nothing. March 5th of 2014, again, nearly a calendar year gone by, Detroit acquires David Legwand from the Nashville Predators in exchange for Calle Jarnkrok, Patrick Eaves, and a 3rd round pick, and this is a loss, as Legwand only stayed for the season. It was a 1st round playoff loss that year, and Jarnkrok is still still on the Predators as of the time of recording. So yeah, major loss there. And then we move ahead again, nearly a calendar year later, as the Red Wings acquire Eric Cole in a conditional 3rd rounder for Mattias Backman, Mattias Janmark, and a 2015 2nd round pick. And this is also a loss, as Cole only played 11 games for the Red Wings before retiring. The Stars picked up a useful player in Janmark, and, Ken Holland, buddy. Kenny. Oh God, Oilers fans, you better hope he doesn't trade away picks. That 2nd round pick became Rupe Hintz. So if you're an Oilers fan, watch out for Ken Holland trading draft picks. It doesn't go well all that often. The very next day, the Wings also acquired Marek Zidlichky in exchange for a conditional 3rd round pick. This is a draw, as the Devils moved the pick, but the Red Wings were bounced in round 1 with Zidlichky as a rental. From there again, nearly a calendar year later, Jakob Kindl is sent out to Florida for a 2017 6th round pick. This is a draw. Now, Kindl stayed for a season and a half. The pick ultimately became Riley Webb, who hasn't made it. You could give the deal to Florida, because at least they got something from Kindl, who stayed there for a while. But at the end of the day, a rather unremarkable player to that point. So I'm going to call it a draw. If you need to give it a win or a loss, it goes to the Panthers. It's a W. We move on to May 26th. Dylan Sadawi is acquired for a 2017 3rd round pick. This is a draw. Sadawi never made it, and San Jose never made that selection. They ended up moving that pick. We move ahead to June 24th. Joe Vitale, a 1st round pick that becomes Dennis Cholowski, and a 2nd round pick is acquired from Arizona for Pavel Datsyuk, and a 1st round pick that became Jacob Chychrun. So this is an interesting one for sure. I'm calling it a win for Detroit. They dumped Datsyuk's contract and lost out on Chychrun, which seems like a lot, especially when Joe Vitale never played. His career was already over due to injury from a fight with Kevin Miller of the Boston Bruins. But the 2 players that Detroit picked up in the deal, Cholowski and that 2nd round pick, Philip Hronek. So, it's not that bad of a trade-off. It's solid. You have 2 pretty solid defensemen for another solid to good defenseman in Chychrun. We move ahead, February 24th. Happy birthday to me. 2017, Chicago acquires Tomasz Yurkov in exchange for a 3rd round pick that season, and this is going to be a draw, as Yurkov didn't do much in Chicago. Detroit drafted goaltender Keith Petruzzelli, who has yet to make it, so it's a draw for now. 4 days later, they send Brendan Smith to the Rangers for a 2nd and 3rd round pick, and this is a loss, at least for now, as I believe Zach Gallant and Jonathan Berggren were used, or were acquired in return, used in this deal. Brendan Smith is Brendan Smith, so the jury's out for now. Say what you want about Brendan Smith, he's not that bad. The contract's a bit rough, though. So jury's out for now. We'll see what becomes of Jonathan Berggren, primarily. We move ahead to March 1st of 2017, just a few days later, as the Florida Panthers acquire Thomas Vanek in exchange for Dylan McIlrath and a 3rd round pick that year. This is a draw, also for now. Vanek was a rental, McIlrath is McIlrath, and they acquired a defensive prospect, I believe, Jesperi Kokensalo, who was acquired with the third. So he is the hope for this deal to work out in the Red Wings' favor. Time, of course, will tell if it does. March 1st of 2017, Montreal Canadiens acquire Steve Ott in exchange for a 6th-round pick. This is a draw. Ott only played 11 games for the Habs, and the Red Wings went on to move the pick. We fast forward ahead to July 1st. Tom McCollum is acquired for a conditional 7th. It's a draw, completely unremarkable trade. And then, October 21st, we have 2 deals. First up with Pittsburgh, Riley Sheahan and a 5th-round pick are acquired for Scott Wilson and a 3rd-round pick. And this is also going to be a draw, at least for now. The 5th-rounder became Justin Almeida. The 2018 3rd-rounder is goaltender Jesper Eliasson. So it could be a win for Pittsburgh with Sheahan, but a slight one at that, which is why I have it as a draw. Time will ultimately tell how that one goes down. We move ahead, of course, to the other trade on that day. Ryan Sproul sent to the Rangers for Matt Plemple. Fun fact, they ended up getting back Matt Plemple after trading the pick that was used to acquire him. It goes down as a draw, though, another unremarkable trade. December of that year, Scott Wilson is sent to the Sabres for a 5th-round pick. This is a draw as well. Wilson hasn't done much in Buffalo, and Detroit ended up moving that draft pick. February of 2018, Peter Mrazek sent to Philadelphia for 2 conditional draft picks. This is also going to be a draw, a rather unremarkable trade. And then we get a really interesting deal here. February 26th, Tomasz Tatar is sent to the Vegas Golden Knights for 3 draft picks. And at the end of the day, this one is a win. Regardless of what Vegas recovered for Tatar, he wasn't a fit on the team. Ended up being a healthy scratch in the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken. Detroit, so far, have picked up Joe Veleno, Robert Mastrosimone, and they still have that pick waiting in 2021. So Detroit did very, very well in that deal. June 24th of that year, Robbie Russo is sent to the Coyotes in exchange for a conditional 7th. This is a draw, at least for now. That pick became goaltender Carter Gylander? Different name, not sure how to pronounce it, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's another notable draw for the Red Wings. Penultimate trade here. February 22nd of 2019, Washington acquires Nick Jensen and a 5th-round pick for Madison Bowie and a 2nd, and this is also a draw for now. Jensen is the best player to date. Washington moved that pick. Who knows what that 2nd-rounder could become in this very upcoming draft. We would have known by now had it not been for COVID. And then 3 days later, Ken Holland made his final pick, or his final trade, of course, it involved picks, his final trade as the GM of the Red Wings, as he sends Gustav Nyquist to the San Jose Sharks in exchange for 2 second-round picks. It's a draw for now, as San Jose, of course, it didn't quite work out for them picking up Nyquist, and Detroit has already picked up defenseman Albert Johansson. The jury is out for now, is how I will put it. So with that, the final count here for Ken Holland: 14 wins, 12 losses, and 41 draws. Some major victories, but some major losses as well. I think if we learned anything here, it's, if you're an Oilers fan, be relatively afraid if you see him move a 1st or 2nd-round pick. But his ability to acquire game-changing players that can push a team over the edge towards winning a cup is clearly there. So, interesting time, of course, for Oilers fans. Perhaps interesting as well if you're a Red Wings fan to look back and see, like, oh yeah, I remember that trade, that was horrible. Oh yeah, I remember that trade, that was great. Ken Holland, good GM at trading, bad GM at trading. Let me know what you think. I don't have him, I have him somewhere in the middle, I would say. He's okay. Let me know what you think, though. I thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this, hey, you know what the deal. Support the video, support the channel. Let me know down in the comments below who you'd like to see me cover next. And until that point in time, have a good one, take it easy, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.